Hi, welcome back to Weatherford Daze. I'm Rachel. This is Jason, and we are on our third week of our children's in-depth reviews of just pulling out favorites of the first week we did Mr. Rogers. We did a TV program. Last week we talked about our top tier favorite, which was The Chronicles of Narnia with C.S. Lewis. And this week we're going to go back to one of those classic favorites that we haven't covered yet, but that I think deserves a spot in the greats. Well, we're going to talk about two of them. And that is, we're talking about The Secret Garden and A Little Princess. So, and I don't know why we decided to put those together. Probably because I was given for Christmas one year, I believe by my grandmother, a set that had those two
It's not the same.
together.
It's not the same author, is it?
It's not the same author, no.
I want to be honest. I got those two mixed up consistently. Growing, they're just not growing up, but just existing.
They're so
up.
very different.
They
though.
They are different, and
And yet both kind of are about a rich little girl that finds herself alone in the world. So there are, similarities in that. But yeah, which one do we want to talk about first?
Well, I'd probably Secret Garden.
Okay.
Because you want to take advantage of
I would
any.
say I liked The Secret Garden more than A Little Princess. I think they're both really, really good. There was just something that appealed to me more about the story of The Secret Garden. I think it was a little bit easier to read.
There's some. I didn't read the second book, so I'll have to defer to you on that. But just as a side note, I didn't grow up with these books, but
Had you watched the movies?
I think I watched the movie from 1998 one, I think is the right one.
That you hadn't watched? Because A Little Princess, the movie is it may be a little bit more famous than The Secret Garden. I don't know, because Shirley Temple played Sara Crewe. The
I thought maybe she did, but I didn't see that one. I saw Rebecca of Sunnybrook Farm and the other ones, the other, something about little colonel or something, I think was one of those.
A Little Princess was kind of her iconic role. It was really kind of her most serious
Now
role,
I wanna
because she
see
had
that.
been,
Yeah.
when she was younger, she had been in, all of the musicals where she's basically just singing, but she wasn't really known for her acting
Right.
in those. And this was her first big acting movie, I think. And yeah, it was really an iconic role for her. But it was one of the first, I think it was the first Shirley Temple movie I ever saw. So then going back to the ones when she was younger, where she's just singing and dancing, was like, oh, these are really cute. But, I kind of got introduced to them in the opposite direction. I'm sorry, we wanted to talk about Secret Garden first.
Well, and there were some elements in this that in the book that I picked up on, and I found a version of the movie that I think was a little bit earlier than 98, I think. And I did connect with some of the elements and and the themes. So, let's unpack that. What do you want to?
Yeah, so I guess
do you
we
want to talk
should
about the plot?
go through. Yeah, we need to talk about the plot. You want me to do it, or do you?
Oh, we could tag team it. So
What
I
about you?
do know. Okay, I remember. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Okay, so the main character, Mary Lennox, I guess she's like 11, 12, no, 10, 11. I don't know her age.
Somewhere in there.
She's young.
Yeah.
Elementary school age, I guess. Her mother and father are wealthy. I believe they're in India. It's during the Raja period where you had when Britain was ruling. And there's a cholera epidemic, and she is not well looked after. It's almost like there's a part where somebody says that her mother only liked pretty things, and it's almost like she was an accessory, and
She was watched after by servants, but yeah,
well,
it seemed like it was kind of a cultural thing at that point for the rich couples to, they had children, but then they let nannies take care of them and bring them up until they were
And
old enough to
she
really
didn't
be.
dress herself or anything, and she wasn't independent at all.
Mhm.
She and if they didn't bring something fast enough for her, she could slap them and they'd say, "Oh, sorry, miss," and just say all that. And I'm like, "Oh, wow."
She was very spoiled and entitled, but it seemed like that was something that was kind of bred into her. That was the way that she saw
Well,
people
we learned
act.
that she's not a one note person. That there's more to her, and it takes just real humanity to open that up in her. But that's a spoiler. So,
Well, all of this is spoilers. We're
of course, oh, right,
giving the plot.
but I'm jumping too far ahead.
Okay.
So her mother and her father actually dies, or they
Mhm.
die. So she is an orphan basically, and she goes to live with in the house of Archibald Craven. There is a woman who runs she's like the caretaker of the house. Is that Mrs. Medlock? She's like the
Mhm.
main lady there, and there's a
It's
maid named
Is he
Martha.
her great uncle? He's related to her
I
somehow.
don't. I think he's he. No, you know what it is? He's connected to the
Or her
regiment or
godfather.
something. It's like it's not a direct relation. He's doing it out of the
Okay.
kindness of his heart, so to speak.
But it seemed like he was named as her protector.
Yeah, but,
So he did have a responsibility for her.
right. But
It wasn't
he
just
doesn't have to do it.
unrelated.
It's something he's choosing to
Yes.
do, and you're kind of okay.
But
But
she
yeah,
would have had money on her own. She was still wealthy. She would be an heiress. Just she didn't have.
it
I
doesn't
always thought
show
it
her
kind of
like
seemed that he was her
tapping into
godfather.
that. Well, you could be right, but
So or like
I didn't really pick up on that. That's that, I mean,
okay.
I miss things sometimes, little details like that that I only get on the second watch through or read through. But hey, yeah, I'll defer to you on that. But you have that knowledge. But suffice it to say, she comes to a house. The master of the house is not there. He's gone off he's left, and so you have these. It's not hot and sweltering like it is in India. It's nice and cool, but it's windy. There's the moors, and she she goes, "Oh, the moors are ugly." She says that just well, you ought to see it when the heather's in bloom. And so it's a little bit of a judgy. She's kind of judgy the way she starts out. She's still kind of kind of stuck up in her own ways. But those things start to kind of work their way out. She eventually learns some of the story behind different things. There's actually a garden. This is the titular secret garden. It's walled off, and there's no way to get in. It has a key or a key lock, and you're not supposed to go in there. Don't mess with that. And so, of course, that's going to make her curious about that. She goes outside a little bit more and breathes that nice fresh air, and something starts to change. Just little by little. She meets a boy named Dickon, and he is the son of either a lady that works at that house or a lady of the
He's the younger
village.
brother
Right,
of one of the servants. Yeah.
right. And he's got away with animals and with playing the flute music. So he's very a natural kind of kid, and he just he doesn't mind going out there just hanging out in the moors and just So I think he's a really cool character. I really liked him.
I want to say,
Yeah.
though, I'm going to interject
No, by all means.
because one of the things that is, she is kind of left alone there for the first time in her life, where she just doesn't have somebody hovering. She's bored, but at the same time, the servants and the housekeeper expect her to be able to care for herself.
Right.
So
Be independent
she's
somewhat.
not, yeah, she's no longer dressed. She's no longer kind of spoon fed. She no longer can just throw a fit or hurl insults at the people and be groveled to.
Yeah, they don't take it. They're kind of like
They're,
they don't take any
you know,
back talking.
they're not mean to her or harsh, but there is an expectation, there's a difference in the way that they treat her.
Yeah.
And she kind of realizes that, you know, oh, they speak to me respectfully and I speak back respectfully. There's some
It's
things
not
that I can
commanded
learn to
or
do on
demanded.
my own. And she
Yeah.
realizes that she actually enjoys being treated with respect, being treated as somebody that's capable of doing things on her own. And that's kind of this turning point for her
She fits that.
as she's going, oh, I actually can dress myself and I'm expected to. There's this whole kind of thing of the way that you're treated and you're expected to act. And she steps up.
Yeah.
That is very important. It's an important plot line. And then as she's going and you know, she's given a jump rope is the first thing and told to go play. And she doesn't really know what to do and how to play
Right.
and what it's like even being outside. But as she kind of, is growing in independence and being challenged, she's stepping up to those challenges.
Her attitude is also changing too.
And
It makes a point early on. It says that she had a sour face, or wasn't.
it's not even sour so much as sallow.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That
She
too.
hasn't
Maybe like a
been
jaundice.
outside.
They said yellowish skin. I was like, oh, she hasn't had any vitamin C and and no sunshine. Sunshine is an amazing medicine for her. Her attitude starts to change too. So it's almost like they recognize, well, she's she's a very lovely person. It's like
But a
amazing how
lot
that
of the
works out.
change comes from what the expectations are for her. The expectations change.
Yeah, she meets it.
And as she is treated like she can do things, she discovers that she is capable of doing things.
Right.
And she discovers that she likes that she likes being treated in that way, that she likes being capable, that she likes, actually being able to do things for herself. She's discovering this independence and this desire to explore the world and to do things that she thought she could never do before. And so when she discovers that this wall covered in ivy has a door in it and that it's locked, then she, goes on a hunt for the key.
There's a part where a wind blows in, just kind of.
There's a little bird.
Yeah.
That hops along the wall and actually helps her to discover the keyhole.
Yeah, and there's a gardener, Weatherstaff, Ben Weatherstaff.
Old grumpy guy.
Yeah, Ben, he's okay. But Ben Weatherstaff, he kind of tells her a little bit about the garden. He's like, I'm not supposed to. Okay, I'll tell you. And and it turns out that the garden was walled off because that was the Master Archibald Craven's wife's favorite place to be. It was beautiful once, and he shut it off because his wife was sitting up in a kind of a tree, a small little tree, and she fell and she must have hit her head or something, and she died. And
was she sitting up in the tree or was she in the swing?
She was one of the two, but I think it was the tree. But the thing was, tell me if I'm wrong, she was pregnant at the time, and it caused her to
go into early labor.
Yeah. And that was another character who comes along. Later you'll find out.
Well, and that's the thing is, as she discovers and she gets inside this garden and she starts just wanting to kind of bring it back to life. That's where
she tells Dickon about it,
right?
and
she meets
they conspire
Dickon.
to
He
do
kind
something
of he
about it.
peeks over the wall and
Yeah.
realizes she's in there, and then he knows about gardening and how to do that, so he teaches her, and they start caring for the garden and bringing little patches back to life and planting things. And
she gets Dickon to go into town. Very early on, she gets Dickon to go into town to buy to get those things. And they're like, well, how do you know she's going to come back for it? It's like she doesn't really know him that well yet, but she takes that step out in faith, and it pays off because he brings a shovel and trowel and little tools, and that's them getting started with their project.
But then, shortly after they start off in the garden, she hears in the middle of the night, she hears crying.
She thinks it's like maybe a ghost or a spirit or something.
And
or that's hinted.
I think that she asked the servants at first, and they're like, it's nothing, it's just the wind. And she's, then after a little bit, she's like, no, that's not. So she goes looking and discovers that she has, well, they call her his cousin, which is why I thought that she was related.
Maybe so, but
But I don't know. We'll have to look that up. See
I thought, I kept in my head, I kept calling him Colin Creevy, but I know that's from Harry Potter, but it's Colin Craven,
yeah.
which is interesting because that and we'll probably when we talk about the themes that we picked up on. I mean, the word Craven
Mm,
means fearful, and that is ultimately something that's affecting
yeah.
this family.
Which, in the very first meeting, the servants are all kind of catering to him. He's crying. He is another one that's just spoiled, and he's been babied his entire life because he's been sickly. He was injured. He can't walk. So, he's just had everything handed to him
He thinks
and
he's
has
gonna have
been
a hunchback too, like his dad.
right, but he's been raised to believe that he can't do anything
Yeah,
because he has been sickly. And so he's been overprotected and babied, and he's been raised in fear. And when Mary stumbles on him, the first thing she does to him is she steps in and she yells at him to stop crying.
yeah. If you keep crying, I'm gonna leave. And he's like, "No, please stay." And so then he stops. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a little bit further down the
Oh
line.
yeah.
But
Okay.
yeah, like she kind of stands up to him. And I think she might be the first child, really, that he's ever interacted with around his own age. He's used to everybody just hovering over him and giving him whatever he wants and, really catering to him.
Sounds like Mary.
And
Mary's
right.
early times. Yeah.
But Mary, by this point, has kind of learned and she's grown past that and realized that it wasn't good for her.
Yeah.
And so she steps in and kind of is like, no, you can't act that way. And kind of pulls him along on her own path because she's like, hang on, I've learned all this. Now it's your turn to learn all this. And so she encourages him and she tells him about the garden eventually and about
About Dickon,
Dickon.
and
Thank you. I lost his name for
he
a
wants
second.
to meet Dickon. He's like Colin
Right.
wants to meet him.
Well, at first, Colin
He's
seems a little
fascinated.
bit jealous
Yeah, a little bit.
of Dickon because Mary has such a high opinion of him and talks so well about him. And he's, you know, he's kind of jealous of the way that she talks about him because I think it's kind of one of those where Dickon is everything that he wishes that he could be and that he knows he can't.
Yeah.
He's healthy and he's strong and he's capable and Colin doesn't feel like he's any of those things. And Mary already kind of yelled at him and put him in his place and he wants that respect from Mary that Dickon has.
Right.
So it's a little bit of an interesting dynamic there, but it's a challenge. And I think that was the thing that really inspires Colin to go on the journey of healing too. You have some very broken people that through the process of gardening and getting out into nature and being challenged, it's like the garden isn't what healed them, but it helped them heal. And it doesn't even stop with the children either, which is, it's just such a beautiful story, isn't it? You've
I
got,
like that they pull him up and have him walk a little bit, and
mhm,
they don't baby him. They're like, "Come on, you can do this,"
yeah,
And he wants to be a part of it. So she puts like pillow down there. He goes, "Oh, you okay? Come over here, plant some stuff."
yeah.
They're pulling the capability out of him that was similar to what they did with showed her that she had
They
capability.
encourage and inspire him. And there's just such positivity. It's like in this secret magical place, they can do anything, you know? And they just take it little bit by little bit. Like, they really become mini therapists. They have no idea what they're doing, but
Well,
because of that love
a
and just
garden is
that
your heart.
desire.
It's your heart, and when you wall it off, it tends to die, and when you don't give it care, and it also that affects the dad too. He's walled his heart off.
Well, we
He
haven't
doesn't.
gotten that far in the story yet, so we're jumping all around.
Okay, yeah. Well, she meets the dad later, but yeah.
But that is a thing that after they're, everything's kind of seems to be going well for the children. They're all growing, they're all healing, they're all changing, they're becoming stronger as they're, getting out into the garden every day and helping the garden to grow and cleaning it up and getting it back into a good place. They're being healed at the same time. They're coming together as friends and they're discovering what it is to be healthy children in, mind, body, and spirit. And then into this walks the dad, right? He comes home to visit and
The garden is still secret. He doesn't know yet.
he discovers them in the garden, doesn't he?
Later, he discovers it later. He talks to her. He talks to Mary. Mary's a little bit nervous about meeting him, and she kind of goes back, a step backwards a little bit in the way that she's meeting him. But
No. I thought that even before he sees his son.
well, he sees him and doesn't interact with him. It keeps him at arm's length a little bit. And I think maybe he's
Okay.
kind of.
Well, go ahead and tell me the rest because you're remembering this differently than I am, but you've seen it more recently than I have. So apparently I'm remembering wrong.
No,
Go ahead.
it's he.
Because I thought that he discovered them in the garden and freaked out.
Well,
And he like tells them absolutely not, you can't be here, and actually like
okay.
banishes them from the garden. Is that not, did that not happen?
I don't remember. I do know that he sees his son walking at the end.
Yeah. And that's what actually changes his mind and softens him.
Right.
But first he sees Mary and like yells at her for being in the garden, for being an interloper, because he has so much, just negative. It was such a bad negative experience at the end there with his wife dying, and he had closed it off. He didn't want anybody out there. I mean, he is
Yeah.
hurting. And so he sees her out there and yells at her and tells her not that, she can't ever go in there again. And she's devastated. She's crushed. And then he sees his son. And like he goes in there and Colin actually stands up out of his chair and starts like walking. He starts taking steps and he's like, Father, no, look. And the dad's just like, what? And absolutely just speechless and in awe and, and he's like, what happened? How did you do this? And he's like, well, it was Mary and Dickon and, and starts telling him about how they've been taking him out to the garden and all of this. And the dad realizes that he had completely misjudged Mary and overreacted to her and, that he owes her an apology. So he is able to go and actually tell her, at the end that he's sorry and let her have access to the garden again.
And he's kind of probably realized that he's, kind of kept his son at arm's length. He didn't really know how to show love
Yeah.
because he was so hurt and he was such a pained man.
But it's really a breakthrough moment for him where, through seeing that he didn't lose his son, that his son is there and needs him and has been hurting. And what, by running away from his pain, he's been hurting his son. Because I guess he just thought that, his son was being well taken care of.
Well, he's hurt and his son was hurt by
Yeah.
him, and it's a cycle, and Mary breaking her cycle of.
But the son also looks very much like his wife, too.
Oh
They
yeah.
do mention that, is in that just, he couldn't hardly bear to look at her because, or at his son because he sees his wife.
It reminds him every day of, that,
That he
of the
loved
death.
and
Yeah.
lost, yeah.
Yeah.
But, they don't take us at the end of that book all the way. There's still story that's left to be told. It's the beginning of the healing for all of them. We see kind of the journey of the children, but we don't see the complete end. But we see the start of it, of the healing, of the father softening, of him admitting that he was wrong, of him resolving to be there for his son and to actually develop that relationship. And so that, everything's changed. And it was through that garden and, just all of the healing that took place in all of those relationships. And I don't know, I don't know that I had ever before that book read anything that dealt with pain and hurt and healing to that extent
Restoration.
before.
Yeah.
hmm And that was truly a kid's story, but it really had depth that even now I don't feel like you see in a lot of kids' stories. And
You might in a sweet, non-spicy romance, or a good feel-good kind of book, but the characters would be a little older.
yeah, but I mean, in a kid's book, just I really think that it stood out, and especially for how old of a book it was, to be able to take these adult themes of pain and suffering and loss, and to take and tie that together with such healing and healing, seeing the repercussions that it had on the children and how they were treated and what they needed. And it doesn't, it does a very good job of show, not tell. You're not getting explicitly this is what's happened and this is, but it just shows it so beautifully through the story.
Yeah.
It's extremely well done. It's a really beautiful story. And the movies that I saw and the book that I read were just, the movie was so accurate to the book. It just really, really well done.
This other one I saw is close, but I think you said there's still story left to tell. I think they do kind of continue the story a little bit. It's bookended with Mary Lennox being older, and she's
Hmm.
coming back to the Craven estate after many years. And I think she either is volunteering with the war effort or something like that, or she's doing something positive. And she comes back and she sees Ben Weatherstaff still there. And supposedly, Dickon early on says something like, "Oh, I won't really see you again after this." And it goes, Dickon said that because he died in the war. He knew he would die in the war. That's not in the book, I probably.
I don't remember that being in the
No, no,
book,
no.
huh?
And she goes into the garden that Ben still keeps up after all these years, and she hears something, and there's somebody coming up the steps, and it's Colin,
Walking.
and he's got a cane a little bit,
Cane.
but he's still walking,
Hmm.
and it's played by Colin Firth, Pride and
Oh,
Prejudice,
wow.
and the dad in Nanny McPhee himself,
Yeah, I
and
don't
he's
think I
he's
saw that
really
version.
young. Oh my goodness, he's so young, and supposedly he kisses Mary, like
Yeah,
like
so they're just
kisses
completely
Mary.
ignoring the whole cousin thing there.
No, that's probably why I did. That's probably why I did. And even if they didn't, I probably blanked it out of my mind because I didn't want to think that it was. But
Okay.
but I think it's okay if they're third cousins according to the old way of thinking. But I don't think that. Anyway, good to
You
know.
just had to throw that out there because you're from Alabama. You're like, no, no, no. Stereotype not true.
No,
Word. Oh, thank you. We just went off the rails.
it's so much fun. It's so freeing. You just it's like riding your bike and you put your arms up and you go down the hill. Yeah, it's like that.
So, yeah,
Equally as dangerous.
beautiful, awesome story. The power of, I mean, there's a lot in there about the power of, or the healing that can come from nature.
Right.
about the healing that can come just from being treated like you're capable, having somebody believe in you and kind of push you to go outside of your comfort zone. And
Simple miracles, maybe.
yeah,
It's not like lightning from heaven, God sending lightning, and it sometimes it just shows up as sunshine. It shows up as a simple, common thing that your heart just opens up, just like a flower.
to me though, the most powerful thing for the healing that happened in all of those was just the expectation that you could do something. You know, having somebody else believe that you could and expect you to do something that you didn't think that you were capable of doing yourself. And that was there, with each of them was kind of just, well, of course you can do this. If you want to, you're capable of it. And they kind of, each one, Mary and Colin and the father, all, with being met with that, of course you can heal. Of course you can dress yourself. Of course you can walk. Each of those was just, actually realizing, oh, well, maybe I can.
I had a theory that there wasn't supremely serious spinal injury or leg injury for him and for the dad. I saw in my this is what I saw in my head is that he's all hunched over. He's just kind of closed in because of the just the emotion, the sadness, and he's just it's just, and you're kind of hunched over, but then just open up and you just sit straight. And
I don't remember the dad being disabled at all.
it said something like he was a hunchback. It said that he was hunched over, but when she met him, she was kind of like, I didn't really see too much of a hunch. Everybody said that he had a hunchback. That was
The dad?
yeah. That's why the son was afraid that he would have
That
that too, like his dad.
that sounds like something they added into the movie version you watched.
I
Because
I was reading the book at the same time, and it did say something that he was that rumored to be a hunchback. So they said that his back was hunched or something. When she saw him finally, she's like, I didn't really notice that. It's
just
almost
maybe
like
some scoliosis or something.
possible, but in some ways, I don't know how much Colin was just treated like he was fragile and an atrophy. So I was seeing it as an atrophy of the heart, an atrophy of the I don't feel like I'm capable, like a self-loathing kind of thing. He's constantly thinking there's a
Well,
bump on my back or something. There was nothing there. It's in his mind, and it's his sadness that's stunting him, atrophying him.
yeah.
And when he opens up, of course he can walk because he was able the whole time. It was in you the whole
But
time.
it
It's that kind of
sounds like
that
he
kind of
was kind of sickly and had a lot of
oh,
fevers and that kind of
you
stuff
stay
when he was
inside all the time and
younger.
have no immune system.
No, at that time,
Yeah.
though, there were certain kids that just were a little bit more sickly at
Yeah.
birth, and a lot of times they didn't live very long because there just wasn't good medical care at that time. And a lot of kids, especially if they were more prone to sickness, would die earlier on in life.
I was the way I thought about it could be right, but I thought about it in my head that Mary was very yellowish skin, sallow, and then as she got outside, got that nice sunshine and showed that she's capable and she's doing things for herself. She's getting healthier. It even
Yeah,
said you're healthier, you're more energetic. So something
she
changes in
did
her, and
get
healthiness
stronger,
comes in.
but it seemed like it
Yeah,
was just more because she was raised in India, she wasn't able to go outside a lot. And they would have, because of the
maybe so,
environment,
maybe so.
because, malaria and that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
So she was I don't really think that she was ever sickly like Colin was. She was just very sheltered, and also she never was allowed to do anything for herself. She
she was
was
an afterthought.
dressed, she literally was spoon fed. is the way that they described it.
Wow.
So she just kind of sat there and everybody waited on her and did everything for her because of her pampered status. It wasn't because she was ever sickly, but she was pampered. And so it was a little bit easier transition for her than for Colin, because Colin was sickly and he was crippled. His legs did not work.
Yeah.
So they did have to work with him, but it basically, the process that they described was like physical therapy,
It did
where
feel
they're
like that. Yeah.
taking, and just kind of moving his legs a little bit at a time and strengthening his muscles until he was able to work up to walking.
He had like a push cart,
Yeah.
wheelchair kind of thing, and they would
But
have,
it was a process of months that they're describing him just, starting out just moving his muscles a little bit every day to then, taking a couple steps at a time to working up to being able to take a lap around the garden. It was this long physical therapy process that they did with him, that these children kind of came up with and invented this process of how to strengthen his muscles and how to help him to learn. And it really, yeah, it was kind of extraordinary. It wasn't something that the adults would have thought would have ever been a capability. And it really did come from their belief that if he kept trying, he could.
in contrast, you have the main character of a little princess. Does she start out with wealth as well?
Yeah. Now, A Little Princess it's an entirely different story, because where in The Secret Garden you have a wealthy little girl who was spoiled and a brat and entitled, in this one you have a little girl who was sweet and kind and loving and very humble, even though she was very wealthy. So, Little Princess, it has been a long time since I've read this book, but or seen the movie. But yeah, the basic plot line is you've got Sara Crewe, who is the daughter of a captain, and he again is over in India, I believe. Same time period seems like. But he brings her at 6 years old to a boarding school and drops her off, kind of, sets up the details for her care. She's going to be, given everything that she needs, treated extremely well, and
Mm.
he's basically just sending the money for her. I think that he tries to come back for her birthday every year, but he, goes back to India and everything goes fine for a little while. I think she's there for several years. But then one year on her birthday, she's having this very elaborate birthday party given to her by the headmistress of the boarding school, Mrs. Mincham, I think, something
Mention,
like that. Mincham, Mincham, Mincham.
mention.
Yeah,
Mrs. M.
Mrs. M. There we go. But they received word that the captain has died, and at the same time, he had basically invested all of his wealth into diamond mines or something like that, and it had turned out to be a scam or something, and he had no money left. So all of a sudden, she's now a pauper, and not only is she a pauper, she is in debt because he hadn't sent the payment for the boarding house. So the headmistress decides, okay, well, you owe me money, so
Put you to
I'm
work.
going to turn you into an indentured servant. You have to work for me until you pay off the debt.
Wow.
So they take everything, all of the gifts and all of her clothes and everything, her accessories. They sell those off and they put her up in the attic, and she becomes a servant. Not only is she a servant, she's a servant who's very resented. I think that the headmistress had been kind of jealous of her and wasn't really a great woman anyway. She had
Wow.
only been treating her well because she was wealthy.
Mm.
And then that wealth is gone, and the, she kind of sees it as her duty to make her see how, oh, just, how pitiful she is, and how, she's really taking, you know, out of the kindness of her heart, she's actually giving her a job and giving her food and all of this. But it just, it's awful. There's no kindness in the way that she's treated. And all of the girls who had wanted to be around her, because again, she was the wealthiest of all of them, now kind of take on the attitude of the headmistress and are going, well, you're not so high and mighty anymore, are you? Ha ha ha, and so they kind of delight in seeing her fall. And they treat her just so badly. But the thing is that Sara, she's the same. She was never proud. She never asked for anybody to treat her in any special way in the first place. And losing everything, it doesn't really devastate her. She's just like, okay, she takes it just so well. And she continues to be kind, and she continues to be humble, and she continues to be sweet. But it's also hard. She's lonely, and people don't treat her well. And everybody kind of is laughing at her and poking fun of the fact that she's lost everything. And she's dealing with the grief of having lost her father. And it's just, it's kind of a hard story to read. It's hard. And yet,
Because you don't want to see her going through all that,
yeah.
and you're kind of through her eyes the story.
Yeah. And, kind of dealing with the fact that she's now hungry and she's cold, and she's having to work hard. She's cleaning, and she's up, before dawn to scrub out fireplaces and that kind of stuff.
Wow.
It really, it kind of reminds me of the Cinderella story a lot. And just that you have this girl who, through no fault of her own, goes from being wealthy to being poor. So, yeah, there's a lot of similarity between those stories, and just in the character of the girls too. You know, but in this one, I kind of like that it's not a prince rescuing her like in Cinderella.
Right.
The way that it ends up, which again, it had been so long since I have seen this, but you have a man who moves in next door to them, and he has a servant and they have a monkey, and they're from India, right? And the monkey keeps kind of escaping over into Sarah's room, which is up in the, very top floor of the boarding school. And Sarah decides to bring the monkey back, and they kind of strike up a conversation, and the servant is interested and just kind of struck by this sweet little girl. And, by this point, it's been several years now that she's been a servant. And
She has a
so,
conversation with the monkey?
no, with the servant
Oh,
when she brought the monkey back.
okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I kept seeing her
And
going, ooh, ooh, ooh.
yeah, the servant, and, tells about her to his master. And they're kind of fascinated by her and by her sweet nature and that kind of stuff, and struck by the, the situation. They see her room and how bare it is and cold, and they decide to do something for her. So they start sneaking over like little gifts and just things to make her life more comfortable. I think they give her firewood for, warmth, and candles, and like robes and warm clothes and blankets and bedding. And they sneak over food to her and that kind of stuff. And she's not sure where it's coming from at first.
Right.
but then realizes, that it's them that's giving it to her. And in the end, you find out that he finds out who she is, what her name is. And he realizes and tells her that he was her father's business partner. And he was the one who encouraged her father to invest in the diamond mine. And he, was also, I think something had happened where when they got news that the that things had fallen through with the diamond mines, he was like devastated, and he went out and just kind of wandered around for a while, and then came back and realized that her dad had died,
Right.
or was on his deathbed or something. And he came back to try and find Sara for the dog or for the father, but he didn't know where she was. But he had actually managed to kind of pick back up and get some stuff back from that investment. So he had built back up wealth, and he was, fine now, and he's wealthy. But, he lives with the guilt of having kind of been part of the cause of her father dying.
Mm. He blames himself.
That, yeah, just the devastation of losing everything was, and then getting sick had kind of been the cause of the father's death, apparently. So he, he's been looking for Sara for years now, and then finally finds her, and he's goes, okay, well, I'm going to fix things for you. I'm going to adopt you and, pay off everything. But, there's like a confrontation between him and the evil,
Yeah.
the evil headmistress.
She gets to
And
come up and say,
right. So everything turns out in the end, but I don't know. VeggieTales did a remake of it. And so every time I think about the story now, I'm thinking, not only the Shirley Temple version of it, but I've got the VeggieTales songs stuck in my head. So it's, again, just a really sweet story. And when you hear the VeggieTales guys talking about it, I love what they said. They said, it's not really, she doesn't learn the lesson. She kind of is the lesson.
right.
In that, it's not that she had to have any major character arc, like, in The Secret Garden,
Mary
Mary
and
did.
Colin. Yeah.
Right. They all had to learn the lesson. In A Little Princess, she just, she is the lesson, because how she handles everything that life throws at her, she handles it right. She does it well. She maintains her hope and her kindness and her humility through everything that happens to her. And because of her goodness through all of that, she ends up actually getting rewarded in the end, and things turn out well for her. But you really kind of get the sense that even if that hadn't happened, she would have been okay, because she just was the kind of person that would have persevered and would have been okay. Because everybody that she met, if they were good in and of themselves, they could see the goodness in her and they wanted to help.
Right.
She brought out the good in everybody, except for those who just wanted to hang on to the evil.
Right.
So I don't know. I would have loved to, in some ways, have seen the evil people actually learn, but maybe in some kids' stories, it's just not quite, it's a little more cut and dried.
Right.
It's like you've got the bad people are just bad and the good people are good, and that's the moral of it.
Yeah, and this is a little more of a simplistic kind of, you know, I wouldn't say static character is kind of the way some people would say, but I do relate to dynamic characters that go through a change, that go through an awakening. I think because it mirrors, kind of my life from every day, going from one frame of mind to a more positive one. You want to see a progression. You want to do that, and there's some that are just good people throughout. that there's
I think
those
we
kinds.
need both of those kinds of stories because
Right.
we have both of those kinds of people. I think of, my life. I've never really had the time when I just, I've never had the major character arc, I don't feel like, but I do feel like throughout all of it, even though I never had the prodigal moment where I turned away, I always felt like God was faithful to me and God blessed me. And I feel like I never had to face super bad things because I never made super bad decisions. And there's a blessing in that. I used to think that I didn't have a really big testimony, you know?
I don't think anybody has to have their testimony just begin with I hit rock bottom, and then for it to be something,
Yeah.
because there's plenty of people that say,
But even though I
God's
may
always been
not,
faithful, and here's why, and you can find that out too, no matter whether you've had my life or you've had it really rough. It doesn't matter. God's faithful either way, and here we go. It's not about my situation. It's about God.
but I feel like I did, I've still had challenges and struggles. But I like to think that, I've had the blessings that kind of more parallels Sarah's because she went through the struggles, but she had it easier because she maintained a good attitude and she was faithful throughout. And
Right.
she got that blessing in the end. And so, yeah, I'm going. I love the stories of the prodigals who learn the big lessons and, have the big turnarounds, but I also love the stories of just somebody who was faithful throughout and received the blessings throughout. Because everybody's life is going to parallel one or the other of those, or maybe somewhere like in the middle of those.
But the fact that these are children's books is what I find excellent, is that I don't know if we have children's books nowadays that are as impactful.
Hmm.
I want to be honest. I mean, maybe it was a different time where we didn't mind not dumbing down things for them. We, like you said, there's difference between, what was it, mature topics or mature writing. It was, I don't know how you put it last time, but I get what your point was, is that we're going to write about things that don't talk down to kids. And that's
Hmm.
one thing. That's also another thing that Mr. Rogers talked about, is you don't talk down. You sit down with them on their level. You talk to them, but don't talk down to them, as if they're realize that they have minds and they can think of things, and they just need guidance, and someone to listen. And in this, the writing was not dumbed down. It was very crisp. It was very descriptive. I don't know that we are getting that nowadays for, I don't mean 15, 16-year olds. I mean like 8, 9, 10-year old. That's why,
Hmm.
if you give your kids the classics like these books, and then maybe they'll realize they have a capability they didn't know they had, that they don't just have to digest this 30-second frenetic kind of story. They can read something about growth, and about nature, and about capabilities you didn't know you had, that were there all along if you would just awaken them. Those, that's good stuff. And I think we're sorely lacking with that nowadays. Yeah.
So, yeah, two very different but beautiful books, and I think good messaging for both of them. So, with that, again, I think we're out of time. Thanks for joining us tonight. We're gonna wrap up, and next time, do we know what we're talking about?
I thought we were going to do fairy tales.
We're gonna do fairy tales next time.
That's a big one.
I guess we'll see.
Hmm.
Anyway, we will see you guys next time. We are very excited. We've got 2 more weeks of January, so we'll see what we come up with for more in the children's department.
Of the bookstore of our minds.
Yeah, this has been fun. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks for joining us. Bye.